Witness the exact moments when police knew Chris Watts was guilty in his family's disappearance. And
Let's sure the police knows that he is guilty for what he done to his family.
The eventual found murder of his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters. We're going
That's sad. You could be another father, but you killed your pregnant wife, and that's mean to kill your your 2 young kids.
going to analyze Chris's body language from police body cameras to show you when police knew he did it. This stunning insight is next. Welcome back to the channel. Derek Van Schaik here. Chris Watts is the northern Colorado man who eventually admitted to killing his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters on the morning of August 13th, 2018. Right now, you are watching Chris Watts cover up the scene of his crime by loading his deceased pregnant wife and 2 young daughters into the back seat of his work truck, which took him about 50 minutes that morning. His
You stupid. Cover it up.
pregnant wife Shanann was found buried in a shallow grave in an eastern Colorado oil field where Chris worked, and the bodies of his
Look how cute the 2 kids is, and look how pretty his wife was. How could you do that to your 2 kids, Chris Watts, and your pregnant wife? That's good that you are in jail for what you done.
2 little girls were found dumped in oil tanks. I live just 40 minutes south.
Instead, you dumped their body with the kid's body.
Of where all this happened, so this case literally hits close to home. At first, Chris Watts claimed his family was just missing, and that's where
You a liar, Saka, so you should have just tell the truth the first time.
we're going to start. We're going to watch through police body cameras how this first day unfolded, and I'll point out Chris's body language, which caused police to really suspect he was guilty. Since cameras are now everywhere with doorbell cameras, police body cameras, and cell phone cameras, it's shocking to witness firsthand how everything unfolded and then unraveled quickly for Chris that first day. Now, let's get started.
How you guys doing?
Brother,
What's that?
do you remember me?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
How you been?
Hi.
You Nicole?
Yes.
What's going on?
So my friend, we were out of town for a business trip this weekend,
All right.
and I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls, and she was very distraught over the weekend, wasn't eating normally or drinking, and we kept trying to force it on her because she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband and her supposedly are separating, but she didn't know this. She thought they were just having issues. He disclosed that to me today.
Okay.
Because I called him and I was like, have you talked or heard from Shanann since she left for work this morning? Because I can't get a hold of her. I've called, I've texted. Her car's in the garage. Her shoes she wears every single day are right in the front door.
She only has one vehicle?
No, they only have the one vehicle in his work truck.
Okay. That's what I'm
He
asking.
said
There's
she
not
took
a...
the girls and went on a play date, but they're 4 and 2. She went on a play date? Why wouldn't she take in a car? They're both in car seats.
Bella's so sweet, playing with her baby.
And she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and she didn't go to the doctor's appointment.
Okay. No answer on the phone. Husband's on his way.
Minnie Mouse out there for Christmas. But it's been absolutely gorgeous here in Colorado, like always.
Supposedly, but he said that 30 minutes ago when I called him again, and he said it was 45 minutes out still. And I know the code to the door.
You do?
I do, but there's a thing on it. There's a, no, it'll, excuse me, Chris, I'm just gonna do it. There's a, they have the thing flipped up here.
Oh. What about the garage door?
I don't
Is
know.
there...
And the alarm goes off.
do you mind calling him and seeing if we can get a passcode to this and get my
They're trying to get in the house.
get me permission to go in?
Okay.
It's later revealed the garage door keypad doesn't work, so the only way to get into the house is using the remote garage door opener. Chris seems to have made it so no one would be able to go through the house while he was at work, just in case he thought of extra crime scene cleanup that needed to be done while he was at work.
I'm just gonna check the back, see if I can see anything.
At this point, Officer Coonrod is logically thinking Shanann is having a medical emergency, which is why he's banging on windows to hopefully get her children to let them in to help her.
Yep, I've got to have more unless I get consent from him to go in.
Oh, no, I got a phone!
Yeah, you've got your Fourth Amendment rights to the house. I can't violate that. How you doing? You seen your neighbors today? No? Okay.
This is Nate, the next door neighbor with that security camera. Up until this point, of course, he had no reason to check his security camera footage.
Oh, we're just trying to get a hold of her. Felt like she wasn't feeling too good and pregnant, and they were just concerned.
Casey, don't be mean.
Shit.
Shannon probably scared. She thinks it's her husband knocking on the door.
Shit. How am I gonna get in?
Now Ben is filling in Nate on what's going on and how this is all very odd, which is naturally getting Nate more involved.
Chris told me Shannon was at her girlfriend's house.
Do we know who that is?
Do we know
Or
who?
phone number?
He didn't say.
When did he tell you that?
Chris is acting funny. I don't get it. What did he say?
He told me that Shanann didn't take the girls to school this morning because she was going to go on a play date, but her car's here.
Hey, guys. Hold on, I'm just hopping outside right quick.
What's Chris's phone number? Hey, Chris, Officer Coonrod for the police department. Pretty good. So, do you have any idea where your wife is?
Already, Officer Coonrod feels like Chris isn't taking this seemingly serious situation seriously.
Okay.
He knows where his wife is.
Right. Well, my concern is her car's here. They're saying she is diabetic. I don't want her, if she's upstairs and can't respond. Okay. About how far out are you? Okay. All right. Thanks. He said like 5 minutes. So he's about here.
He's told us 45 minutes 2 times in a row. So he's just been giving us false times and everything. And we know he's been lying because his stories aren't adding up.
Now, the police officer is receiving even more to build on that negative impression of Chris. Obviously, Chris's story of where Shanann and the kids could be is not adding up because he's lying and can't keep his story.
Yep, he's lying about the story with the family, his mom, his wife, and his 2 kids are.
Straight. But why has he been saying he's 5 minutes away for the past 45 minutes? It's likely because while at work, he thought of something that needed cleaning up and didn't want anyone to bust in before he was able to alter his crime scene.
I mean, I don't see anything out of place. I'm not hearing kids. I'm not hearing anything.
No, Cece. Clean up. Remember clean up?
What's Shannon's number? I don't hear the phone ring or anything.
Yeah, the neighbor has a camera system.
See how Ben is rubbing his palms together? That's a sign of positive expectancy. And in this situation, he's expecting information from Nate's camera that will help locate Shanann and the kids.
So he's told us 3 different stories. So the neighbor over there said he has a camera.
Shannon, are you home?
This kid keeps me going.
Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
Is that airplane?
Police department, if anyone's inside, make yourself known.
Is that Bella?
You saw how cute the kids are.
Yeah, you'd think they were here, the kids or someone would respond though. You'd hear some kind of noise.
When Chris finally gets home with the police officer standing right there, he goes to the passenger side of his truck to get something? The officer must be thinking she could be dying in there. Why didn't you just quickly hit the button to open the garage and sprint into the house to find out if your family's okay?
I'm here. Hang on.
Yeah, get me on the phone.
Okay, get Madison.
There's Chris Watts.
Scott, how you doing?
How's it going?
So this is the only vehicle she would have?
Only one that, yeah.
She would drive? Okay.
More diddle-dallying. Instead of running into the house, he goes into his wife's car to either put something into her car or take something out. Regardless, it's very likely he did something that he thinks will help cover his tracks or make it appear he's less guilty.
You know, there's no way you can look for the day? During the daytime?
Now, neighbor Nate is beginning to search through his security camera footage. Everything's already headed downhill for Chris Watts.
Chris is in the house. We're standing outside of the house. Can we go in the house?
Chris was alone in the house for 1 minute and 15 seconds. I think it's safe to say that he wasn't looking under the beds for his family during that time.
I mean, that's up to him. It's his house. If you guys...
Nikki, I'm giving you permission to walk in my daughter's house.
Mind if I come in, Chris? Okay.
Get Madison.
Yeah.
You checked upstairs? She's not there? I just want to make sure she's not passed out somewhere. You mind if I look around?
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Upstairs is when Chris's performance really begins.
Down the phone.
Oh. Well,
All the girls' blankies are gone.
um,
Their blankies they sleep with, they don't leave anywhere without them.
good.
What you'll notice is how Chris throws in diversion evidence and diversion dialogue, which he thinks will help divert people from looking at him as suspect number one and start to believe the ridiculous story that his family just vanished.
Nothing else appears to be missing, though? Just stuff you'd take for a quick trip?
Her phone.
Her phone's here? Her phone's here.
Does she work?
Yeah, she works from home.
Oh, from home?
See how Nicole just flailed her left hand right after she touched Shanann's phone? It was as if Shanann's phone burnt her hand. It's because touching Shanann's phone made the likelihood that Shanann is in danger very real, and it was very emotionally painful for her to touch it.
She works, this is her lifeline.
It was shut down?
She's in the flight. Yeah.
The officer knows people just don't shut down their phones in their own home. This is adding to the officer's suspicion of Chris.
You know her passcode?
I don't know her passcode.
It used to be 2385, but now it's 6 digits.
It's the baby's due date.
Now, the officer is asking him questions to understand whether he has a decent alibi to decide Chris's level of involvement in all of this.
And then she flew out to Arizona Friday morning, and then she got back last night. About 2 a.m. The flight got delayed. She left about 11. She got here at 2.
Okay.
And I went to work this morning about 5:15, 5:30.
Notice the officer's left hand. It's up to his face, and it's up to his face a lot here on out. But we don't know where it is exactly on his face. If his hand is on his cheek or a high chin
Chris, you should tell them where your wife and kids are.
area, it's a sign of evaluation. If it's on his chin, it's decision. But if it's covering his mouth, it's likely he thinks Chris is lying. We sometimes cover our mouths when we don't like what's coming out of someone else's. Have you ever covered your mouth when someone else told you bad news?
Can you look at your camera to see from your security system to see when she left?
It's us who left out the front door.
Very typical of someone who's guilty. Chris is coming across as very negative and not at all proactive. When we lose something or someone we really want back, even long shot ideas always seem worthwhile trying. Chris is hardly giving any ideas or jumping on any reasonable suggestions.
Where do you kids go to school at?
Primrose and Mr.
That he doesn't want anyone know and how he did kill his that they don't want anyone know that he killed his kids and his wife. Look how cute they are. The kids are.
This could have been a little test thrown at Chris by the officer. He may have wanted to see if Chris would jump on the idea to call the school because they were originally supposed to go to school that day.
I have no clue at whatsoever why she wouldn't take her cell phone.
Notice Chris and Nicole are both acting scared and nervous with a lot of pacing around and nervous fidgeting. But there's a huge difference between the two. Chris's nervousness is directed inward for himself because he's nervous he'll get caught. Nicole's nervousness is directed outward because her friend appears to be in danger.
I'm not lost. I don't know where she's at, where the kids are at.
That's his line. If he were a pull-string doll, that's what he would say.
Yep, he's lying again.
I have no inclination of where they're at right now. I have no idea, where they went. I have no inclination of where she is. I don't have no inclination of where she is.
It's bull crap.
The camera said nobody left the house during the day. The only people that showed up in the driveway and entered it were us.
Immediately, she looks at Officer Coonrod in a look of shock realization that Chris must be involved. I'm sure the officer gave Nicole a similar look, but more muted.
What's that?
Nicole holds her chin while looking at Chris in a sign of decision.
Your neighbor.
Now she rubs the front of her neck in self-comfort due to the troubling news. So, what's Chris's reaction to that shocking news? Watch this.
Your neighbor, he has cameras. He said that the only people that left the house were you in the morning and then drove or shut and then that's all he has.
I dropped her off.
Okay. But who left and entered? Okay.
Chris just says, okay. He knows that news makes him look very guilty. Chris tried to brush aside that shocking and troubling news to downplay its importance in front of the police officer. But the officer saw what Chris was trying to do, so now Chris's guilt has become very obvious. Now it's
That's good. His Dennis can know what's going on.
seems Officer Coonrod throws Chris a little test to see how guilty Chris really feels. As you just saw, he walked a few feet behind Chris, and if you never saw a man shit his pants, watch this.
Dispatch Rick 91. You can cancel.
Look at that terrified look on his face. He thought the officer was radioing him in to arrest him right there.
Oh my gosh, you read what
First stage.
it said that he failed the police test.
Chris buries himself even more in his phone to escape the tension he's feeling, likely texting love messages to his secret mistress. Yep, more playing with his phone instead of figuring out solutions to find his family. The police officer, of course, is taking all of this in, and it looks like his hand is higher up on his face now, likely covering his mouth at this point in shock and disagreement with what Chris is saying, not saying, and how he's acting. Now, some light fact-finding and interrogation comes.
So what time do you work?
Usually, once I get to work, it's like 6:30 to 3:30, 4 o'clock.
You usually work nights or days?
Days.
What time do you leave the day?
What time I leave there?
No, here.
Usually between 5:30 and 6.
Right. And was Shannon here then?
Yes. Yeah, she's still in bed.
Does she usually watch the kids, or you have daycare watch them? Or?
She usually watches the kids if they're not in school.
Okay.
The pool! To anyone who doesn't know what Chris knows, that's a logical possibility of where she and the kids could be. They could walk to the community pool. Some people don't bring their phones to the pool. Also, very little clothes or objects get taken to the pool. So that would explain why things aren't missing. It's a hot day in August. That's where they could be. Now, let's watch Chris's response to that idea.
At the pool?
The little rec center thing right here?
There's a pool right down there.
Yeah.
I can run down there and check.
That's his response for a logical place they could be? He's like, I don't want to have to walk outside. It's hot out there. Stop interrupting me while I'm texting my girlfriend. Did Chris really think he could just say, I don't know where my family's at, hang back, text his mistress girlfriend, and get away with annihilating his family? Chris Watts must seriously be the dumbest person on earth.
He is the dumbest person in the earth.